Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I would like to share the 16 books that I am reading instead of reading the Women's Prize for Fiction long list this year. I have no problems with the Women's Prize for Fiction, and indeed, had this been a normal, regular year, then I probably would have been swept up in all of the furore that everybody else is at the moment surrounding the Women's Prize for Fiction. And Charlie and I have followed this for years. Charlie runs the Plodalong alongside Alice of Alice's Giant Bookshelf and Gem of... Is it Gem Reads? I'll leave links to their channels in the description anyway. But the Women's Prize is something that I followed for years, and for the last couple of years I have gone out of my way to read as many books from the long list as possible, similar to how I go about reading the Booker as well. However, for the last few years, I have looked at my reading and realised that it had got taken up by prizes, especially last year, where I didn't read any of the books that I was buying from my shelves, which is why this year I made the decision that I was only going to read the books I already owned. And I have this aim to get my TBR quite low because it had risen rather high. And then yesterday I watched the Women's Prize long list announcement and hoped that I would own some of the books on that list. And I didn't. Therefore, I have chosen to create my own list of 16 books that I am going to read instead. As I say, I have nothing against the Women's Prize. This is just a bit of fun and my way to participate kind of in reading a set amount of books by a specific time. So I'm just going to go in alphabetical order here. Firstly, we have Patricia Wants to Cuddle by Samantha Allen. I have been hearing about this book for a while because of it being what people are calling weird fiction. I believe it follows a reality show similar to Love Island, where a female Bigfoot falls in love with one of the contestants. And I got this for my birthday last year and haven't read it. I have decided that I'm going to be reading the blurbs of every one of these. Renee has made it. She's in the final four. But is she dying to win? Renee should be thrilled to have been chosen as one of the final four contestants in The Catch, the world's biggest reality show. But now that she, the other contestants, and Jeremy the Catch have arrived on the remote wooded island for the final show, Renee is starting to wonder if there's something wrong. Is she taking a bigger risk than she thought? And as she and the other contestants begin their final challenges, they slowly realise that the island they've been taken to is hiding a terrifying secret, one that could make the final elimination event all too real. And then going for another piece of what I think sounds like weird fiction, I have chosen Sea Change by Gina Chung. I picked this up in the Whitby bookshop last year because of the blurb, and this cover spoke to me. And when I first went into this bookshop, I put the books back because I thought, no, I don't need to be taking too many books home because I haven't read them. But I kept thinking about this one, so I went back and got it. Ro is heartbroken. Her long-term boyfriend has accepted a one-way ticket on a mission to colonise Mars. Her best friend, wrapped up in planning her own wedding, is too busy to notice. Her only consolation is Dolores, the magnificent giant Pacific octopus her father brought to Ro's aquarium before he disappeared 15 years ago. Dolores can change into colours no one's ever seen before. She comes from the deepest part of the Bering Strait, where conditions are hostile to life. She is the only thing that connects Ro to her missing father. When the aquarium announces that Dolores is to be sold, Ro self-destructs. Wading through memories of her youth and with the tough love from her family and friends, Ro must come to terms with her own place in an ever-changing world. And then we have a book that Charlie of Charlie Brook Reads sent to me quite a few years ago now, and that is Soul Tourists by Bernardine Evaristo. Meet Stanley Williams, single, in his 30s, grieving the death of his Jamaican father and wondering if there is more to life than his 9-to-5 banking job in a sky-high's glass menagerie. Enter Jessie O'Donnell, barmaid, former singer-cum-comedian and desperate to get into her rusty old Lada Niva and hit the freeway across Europe. The unlikely pair begin an electrifying odyssey that weaves in and out of history, colliding with the forgotten heroes of Europe's past, Shakespeare's mysterious dark lady of the sonnets, Pushkin and his Ethiopian great-grandfather, and a mixed-raced Alessandro de' Medici of Florence are all ready to have their voices heard, and Stanley and Jessie do what they can to hang on for the ride. So far, I'm beginning to notice a theme that I have accidentally created myself. We've had somewhat weird books, and in 2 we've got missing fathers. To keep up with the theme of weird fiction, I've got Motherthing by Ainsley Hogarth. Abby Lamb has done it. She's found the great good in her husband Ralph, and together they will start a family and put all the unhappiness in her childhood to rest. But then the Lambs move in with Ralph's mother Laura, and Abby finds the mother of all problems. Laura is venomous and cruel. Oh, and she hates Abby. When Laura suddenly dies, her ghost starts to haunt Abby and Ralph in very different ways. Ralph is plunged into depression, and Abby is being terrorised by a force intent on taking everything she loves away from her. With the life she's built on the line, Abby must make the ultimate sacrifice in order to prove her adoration to Ralph and break Laura's hold on the family for good. It's as though you've taken Monster-in-Law and blended it with Blithe Spirit. And then we have Amy and Lan by Sadie Jones. And this is on the list because I got sent this book in exchange for a review in summer last year. Amy Connell and Lan Honey are having the best childhood. When their families make the leap from city living to a farm in the West Country, they have untold freedom. The adults are far too busy to keep an eye on them, and Amy and Lan would never tell them about climbing on the high barn roof, or what happened with the axe that time, any more than their parents would tell them the things they get up to. Adult things, like betrayal, that threaten to bring the whole fragile idyll tumbling down. So yes, I really ought to get this one read because, I was asked to review it. And then we have a book that isn't my own, and that is Darling by India Knight. This book was lent to me by my friend Joy in summer last year, and originally my dad was going to buy it for me the Christmas before, and I said, no, that doesn't sound like a book for me because of all the flowers on the cover. And then I began to see all these other things. I was like, oh, this isn't just flowers. And then when I read the blurb, I thought it sounded a bit like a Kate Atkinson book. I am finding that everyone's saying that it is a retelling of The Pursuit of Love by Nancy Mitford, a book that I haven't read, but we'll get on with the blurb. Marooned in a sprawling farmhouse in Norfolk, teenage Linda Radlett feels herself destined for greater things. She longs for love, but how will she ever find it? She can't even get a signal on her mobile phone. Eventually, Linda does find her way out of the bosom of her deeply eccentric extended family, and she escapes to London. She knows she doesn't want to marry a man who looks like a pudding, as her good and dull sister Louisa has done, and marries the flashy, handsome son of a UKIP peer instead. But this is only the beginning of Linda's pursuit of love, a journey that will be wilder, more surprising and more complicated than she could ever have imagined. And then we have In Limbo by Deb J.J. Lee. This came up as a graphic novel last year that was recommended as one of the top graphic novels of 2023. Ever since Deborah, Young Yin Lee's family, emigrated from South Korea to the United States, she's felt her otherness. For a while her English wasn't perfect. Her teachers can't pronounce her Korean name. Her face and her eyes, especially her eyes, feel wrong. In high school, everything gets harder. Friendships change and end. She falls behind in classes and fights with her mum escalate. Caught in limbo with nowhere safe to go, Deb finds her mental health plummeting, resulting in a suicide attempt. But Deb is resilient and slowly heals with the help of art and self-care, guiding her to a deeper understanding of her heritage and herself. Although I know that the Women's Prize is known for fiction, and this is a graphic memoir, I still want to read it and include it on this list. And considering mine isn't actually a prize, and I don't think there'll be any winner at the end of it, maybe there is. Maybe I'm going to rank all of these books and decide on a winner at the end of it. I didn't think I would, but maybe I will. Either way, we have In Limbo by Deb J.J. Lee, and it's a graphic memoir, and it sounds like it's going to be incredibly hard-hitting, but I look forward to it just the same. Then we have How We Disappeared by Ying Lee, and this is another book that Charlie of Charlie Brooke Reads sent me, and it is only now that I'm seeing this on the camera that I believe this is actually a silhouette. I've been looking at this for ages and just thinking it was some strange pattern. Anyway, Singapore 1942. As Japanese troops sweep down Malaysia and into Singapore, a village is ransacked. Only 3 survivors remain, one of them a tiny child. In a neighbouring village, 17-year-old Wang Di is bundled into the back of a troop carrier and shipped off to a Japanese military brothel. In the year 2000, her mind is still haunted by her experiences there, but she has long been silent about her memories of that time. It takes 12-year-old Kevin and the mumbled confession he overhears from his ailing grandmother to set in motion a journey into the unknown to discover the truth. Weaving together two timelines and two life-changing secrets, How We Disappeared is an evocative, profoundly moving and utterly dazzling novel heralding the arrival of a thrilling new literary star. With that blurb, I'm now reminded of Wandering Souls that I read for the Women's Prize last year. Then we have Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. And this has been on a few TBRs, especially considering I've had it for 2 years now, because I purchased this book after I met Sarah of Hardcover Hearts and Leo of Leo's Little Book Life in Manchester. And we went into Queer Lit, which was back then on Tibb Street. It's now this huge affair that I've yet to visit. And Sarah pulled this off the shelf and recommended it to me. I didn't acquire any books that day because of carrying them home, but as soon as I got home, I went onto Queerlit's website and got this one. 17-year-old Lily who can't remember exactly when the question took root, but the answer was in full bloom the moment she and Kathleen Miller walked under the flashing neon sign of a lesbian bar called the Telegraph Club. America in 1954 is not a safe place for two girls to fall in love, especially not in Chinatown. Red Scare paranoia threatens everyone, including Chinese Americans like Lily. With deportation looming over her father, despite his hard-won citizenship, Lily and Kath risk everything to let their love see the light of day. And I know that this also has an afterword by the author and further resources at the end of it with a bibliography, so I am looking forward to reading this and then also maybe finding some more of those texts to read. Originally, this next book wasn't on the list, but I saw it on my shelf and thought, no, I need to actually get some of this author's works read that I have unread on my shelves, and that is A Change of Climate by Hilary Mantel. Back in 2020, I read the Wolf Hall trilogy and subsequently went on to read a lot of Hilary Mantel's work, and then I just stopped. So this has sat on my shelf for a very long time. Ralph and Anna Aldred live in the big red house in Norfolk, devoting their lives to charity and the constant flood of good souls and sad cases who take refuge in the family home. But all this hides the growing crises within their own children and the widening fissures in their marriage. Memories of the tragedies they witnessed as missionaries in South Africa refuse to be put to rest and threaten the fragile peace the Aldrids have built for themselves. Will any of them ever escape the demons of their past? All I know of when Mantel writes family is from Beyond Black and Every Day is Mother's Day, and there was this twisted take on family, so I wonder where this one will go. Then we have We All Want Impossible Things by Catherine Newman, and I'm putting this here because Charlie's got a copy and we said we buddy read this. I don't think we will be buddy reading this if I start it, and she's deep in reading Women's Prize books, but I acquired this book in a charity shop last year, and basically it just got put out on the shelf and I saw this is a 2023 release and they put it out for £1.50 and it's originally $14.99. I thought, no, I'm getting it before anybody notices. Edie and Ash have been best friends for over 40 years. Since childhood, they have seen each other through life's milestones, stealing vodka from their parents, the Madonna phase, REM concerts, unexpected wakes, marriage, infertility, children. As Ash notes, Edie's memory is like the backup hard drive for mine. So when Edie is diagnosed with terminal cancer, Ash's world reshapes around the rhythms of Edie's care. From chipped ice and watermelon cubes to music therapy, from snack smuggling to improv to excursions into the frozen winter night. Because life is about squeezing the joy out of every moment, about building a powerhouse of memories, about learning to when to hold on and when to let go. I can remember reading about 50 pages of this in the car when I got it, and I was waiting for my mum to finish at the doctor's, and then I just didn't continue reading it, so I definitely have to get this one done. And then this year, a list would not be a list if it didn't include Barbara Pym, so here we have an academic question. In a provincial university town, Caro Grimstone, a dissatisfied faculty wife, becomes the unwilling accomplice to her husband Alan's ambitions. When she volunteers to read to a blind, esteemed anthropologist in a nursing home, Alan seizes the opportunity to steal his papers, research that could both advance his reputation while refuting the findings of a respected colleague. A delightful comedy of manners with a touch of mystery, an academic question is prime Barbara Pym territory. I very much enjoyed the two Barbara Pyms that I've read now, so I had to include the last one this month. Even though it's somewhat upsetting not to have any more Barbara Pym on my shelves to read after this, I'm sure I will be able to cope. And then we have The Whalebone Theatre by Joanna Quinn. This is a book I took out the library last year and then decided that I wanted for Christmas, so I got it. And the reason that I wanted to read this is because I felt like it sounded similar to a Kate Atkinson, And since I've read all of Kate Atkinson's books now, I'm now trying to find any books that might have that sensation. This is the story of an old English manor house by the sea, with crumbling chimneys, draping ivy, and a library full of dusty hardbacks. It's the story of the 3 children who grow up there, and the adventures they create for themselves while the grown-ups entertain endless party guests. The worlds they imagine from books they aren't supposed to read, and the lessons they learn from eavesdropping through oak-panelled doors. This is the story of a whale that washes up on a beach, whose bones are claimed by a 12-year-old girl with big ambitions and an even bigger imagination. An unwanted orphan who grows into an unmarriageable young woman, chafing on the confines of her traditional upbringing and fiercely determined to do things differently. But far away from the big house, as the children grow to adulthood, another story has been unfolding in the wings. And when the war finally takes centre stage, the siblings find themselves cast, unrehearsed, into roles they never expected to play. They raise themselves on stories. Now it's time for them to write their own. It just sounds like something that I'm going to enjoy. This is one that I'm particularly looking forward to, although I am mildly put off by how large a book it is. I created this list for myself from books I already own, so I can't be too put off, can I? And then I have The Furrows by Namwali Sapel. I read the author's book, The Old Drift, a few years ago, and I did not particularly care for the ending. I am looking forward to this because of the themes that it seems to discuss. Cassandra Williams is 12. Her little brother Wayne is 7. One day when they're alone together, there's an accident and Wayne is lost forever. Though his body is never recovered, their mother can't stop searching. The missing boy cleaves the family with doubt. How do you grieve in absence? And how does it feel? As C grows older, she relives and retells her story, and she sees her brother everywhere. In cafes, aeroplane aisles, subway cars. Here is her brother's older face, the light in his eyes, his lanky limbs, the way he seems to recognise her too. But it can't be, of course. Or can it? And then one day there's another accident, and C meets a man both mysterious and familiar. A man who's also searching for someone as well as his own place in the world. His name is Wayne. This next one I'm putting here because I really want to read this book, and I know that the author has a book which is somewhat like a sequel to this one coming out later this year, and that is The Burgess Boys by Elizabeth Strout. I have met one of the protagonists from this book in Strout's most recent book. Haunted by a freak accident that killed their father when they were children, Jim and Bob Burgess escaped from their main hometown of Shirley Falls for New York City as soon as they possibly could. Jim has belittled his big-hearted brother their whole lives, and Bob, who idolises Jim, has always taken it in his stride. But their long-standing dynamic is upended when their sister Susan, the sibling who stayed behind, urgently calls from home. Her teenage son Zach has landed in a world of trouble, and Susan desperately needs help. And so the Burgess brothers return to the landscape of their childhood, where the long-buried tensions that have shaped and shattered their relationship begin to surface in unexpected ways that will change them forever. All I will say is that I know the resolution to this book because in the most recent Lucy Barton book, it does give away what happened in this book, but I'm still looking forward to it just the same. And finally, because I'm reading a book by this author every month until I've read all of her books this year, we have Blaming by Elizabeth Taylor, which I believe was the final book that she ever published. When Amy is suddenly left widowed and alone while on holiday in Istanbul, Martha, an American novelist, comforts her and accompanies her back to England. Upon their return, however, Amy is reluctant to maintain their relationship, recognising that under any other circumstances the two women would not be friends. But guilt is a hard taskmaster, and Martha has a way of getting under one's skin. That sounds like it might have some more of the darkness that I recognised in The Soul of Kindness. I realise that I'm about to read the last book, even though I said I was reading one book from the beginning of Taylor's career and then one book at the end and meeting myself in the middle. But it was just how they were displayed on my shelf that I forgot that this was Elizabeth Taylor's final novel. It's remarkably short, and I know it comes with an afterword from her daughter, but as always, I'm looking forward to reading this one. As I'm looking forward to reading all of these books, even though I'm not reading from prizes this year and I'm not buying new books, I think it's nice to try and challenge myself and create TBRs and like little games like this will hopefully spur me on to read more of the books on my shelves. Them's the books. If you've read any of these books and would like to discuss them, maybe even recommend which book I ought to start with, please do all of that in the comments. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, because until next time, that is all.